Good morning, colleagues, and thanks for your usual patience on a Monday morning. I really appreciate it. Um, as you can see, our first presenter is Honorable Dr. Virginia Albert, Minister for the Public Service and Gender Relations. Ready?
Good morning. Today is a very significant day in the lives of many people, especially women and girls, as we observe the International Day for Violence Against Women and Girls. This is an activity that the Department of Gender has been undertaking for many years. And today, 25th of November, is the day that it is observed internationally. The theme for this year's observance is Unite, Invest to End Violence Against Women and Girls. And the Department of Gender has a number of activities that are ongoing. And we started today with a church service, and there are quite a few other programs. The Department of Gender has been engaged in a project with the French government, and this project is spread over a 2-year period, and it is focused on our attempts at trying to end violence against women and girls. We have had many situations where women and girls find themselves victims of domestic violence, sometimes at the mercy of their partner. And we have to unite. We have to invest so that we can end that kind of violence. And I have indicated that the Department of Gender, it is not a department just for women, but it is a department that has to promote equality between both men and women. So I call on all St. Lucians and persons around the world to come together and let us see what is possible, what we can do, small as it may be, to end that violence against women and girls in our society. The other critical area I want to speak to is on the 5th to the 8th of November. I had a delegation of representatives from government, the employers, and the trade union, where we visited the ILO office in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago. This is first of such a mission because we felt that the Department of Labor needed to really get an inner understanding of how the ILO office operates and how they can be of support to St. Lucia. So we met the Director General of the Caribbean office and all the different staff members that are responsible for different portfolio. And it was an eye-opener for all three, employers, the trade union, and government. In fact, the director returned the courtesy call, and he was here on the 20th of November, where he visited the OECS office, met with the Director General of the OECS, Dr. Didicus Jules, and he paid a courtesy call to my office as Minister with responsibility for labor. And there we actually looked at a number of issues that St. Lucia need to address. For example, we want to establish what we call the tripartite group, where you have government, the trade union, and the employers working together. The whole idea is to ensure that there is industrial peace in the country. We would engage more in preventative measures rather than trying to cure, so that when there are disputes between employers and employees, we can intervene as a government sometimes to resolve the matter before it escalates into major industrial action and causing problems in the country. So I am looking forward to, there are the ILO conventions, there were quite a few of them. One of the major ones the unions have been advocating for is the Sexual Harassment Convention of the ILO, ILO number 190. And the government has made a commitment to look at that. So the ILO will be working with us to implement ratify a number of these conventions so that we comply with ILO standards. So I felt it's necessary that St. Lucians are fully aware that the Department of Labor is going through a major transformation, because in recent times this department got a new permanent secretary. So it is a fully constituted department in the persons of Mrs. Imbert Charles, Mrs. Imbert, Sheila Imbert. She is the permanent secretary at the Department of Labor, and she's also responsible for gender affairs. And to date, we were able to open the office for the Labor Tribunal and the Minimum Wage Commission. They are operating in the space right now. And we are looking at the issue of training of labor officers and addressing a number of industrial relation matters in St. Lucia. On the 15th of November, I attended the rally of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers Union, and they invited me as the guest speaker. The theme for the rally was empowering teachers and investment to the future. And the discussion at that rally was one that the teachers had they were very excited in terms of the anger at which I addressed the topic. And one of the areas of curiosity for them was, how do I perform my role as a politician and then a former trade unionist? And I did indicate to them that the trade union movement, a lot of the Labour Party and the other political parties in St. Lucia emerged out of the trade union movement in 1934. And therefore, the mantra of the trade union is to defend the rights of workers and to ensure that they get better working conditions and better pay. So being in government, it is a continuation of that mandate, where government is expected to improve the conditions of work and salaries for its workers. And with that, they were able to understand how I navigate between these two important roles. And the empowering of teachers is one where I encourage them to ensure that they continue to improve themselves as individuals while they are actively involved in advancing the conditions of work for teachers and education in their respective countries.
Any questions?
Industrial access. So what's the update on this national bank situation?
Okay, now the First National Bank situation, they are at mediation level. And as Minister with responsibility for labor, I have brought both parties together. So I have met representatives of the First National Bank and representative of the National Workers Union. We have had 2 sessions, and the First National Bank has made a proposal, and the National Workers Union is now deliberating on it. And I'm supposed to meet them on Thursday this week for our final meeting, so that I can give a ruling on the outcome of this dispute between these 2 entities.
There's reports that have been laying off employers in that regard for those who protest. Do you have any of this?
No, I'm not aware of that, and that is not the spirit of negotiations and mediation. So the National Workers Union has not reported a matter to the effect that there is any evidence of that. But so far, we have been making progress between the 2 parties, so that I am very hopeful that we will get some resolution to this dispute.
In regard to the domestic violence legislation, has the department done any assessment to see how it's been, I guess, impacting people? Has it actually helped? Do we see more reports being made? What's been happening since then? Or we still have the same problem?
Okay, now the Domestic Violence Act did make a request that it's not just having an act and leave it there. We have to implement the act. And a lot of the activities that we are undertaking now is in response to this act. And we have done training for police officers so that they understand how to implement certain sections of the act. We also did training for magistrates so that they understand the implication of the act and how they handle disputes and matters that come before them. Before, when there was incidents of crime, the police would just lump everything as a criminal matter. But now they have to disaggregate it to know what is domestic and what is just a plain criminal matter. So that kind of data is coming in now, so that in the coming months, we should be able to see documentation of incidents and cases of violence against women or domestic violence. So definitely we are working on that with regards to responding to the different clauses in the Act.
When did the police training take place?
When police training took place, because
Um,
what happened is we're still getting reports from people who are saying that the police are not responding to domestic disputes.
Well, you remember we have over 1,000 police officers, and we did training for about 50. And we also developed a manual, a guide, so that they can follow. So even those who have not had the training, they would have the guide in terms of what is expected of them, how do they document domestic violence cases, and how do they record, and how do they deal with cases as they come to them. So it is one that we are continuing. We got some funding from it was a 600,000 euro project with the French government, and we have had a number of activities. We have put up all the billboards all over trying to promote the idea of no violence against women. And as I said, as we observe the 16th day of activism, that started on the 25th of November to the 10th of December, we are actually engaging in a lot of promotional activities to discourage violence against women and girls, at least for this period, and the ongoing training and other activities that the Department of Gender has been undertaking.
I just want to ask the Minister, is the Gender Affairs Department monitoring closely, based on what you indicated, that the sexual harassment, I believe that would be a policy that you are looking into establishing? The police service, the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, has indicated that it has drafted a sexual harassment policy.
Mm-hmm.
Has the Division of Gender Relations or Department of Gender Relations been closely monitoring that draft policy? Have you examined it with the view of adopting it across all the public service departments?
Yes. Now, I am fully aware that the police department developed a sexual harassment policy, and we have to bring that in line with other legislations in the country. And the sexual harassment policy is one that we have to comply with the ILO convention. And as soon as St. Lucia ratifies the convention, we have to bring all our legislation and policy in line with what is expected from the ILO. So that is why we are aggressively trying to push now for St. Lucia to ratify the ILO convention. And then policies like the sexual harassment policy that is already undertaken by the police, we can actually confirm that we are already doing something about that. And it will be applied not just to the police, but across the entire workforce, because it's sexual harassment in the workplace.
Are you concerned at all? Does it weigh on you, considering that with regard to the allegations made against the senior police officer, which really brought about this sexual harassment policy for the police force, that these allegations go as far back as perhaps almost 20 years and with absolutely no resolve. Does it concern you that despite those allegations being so old and some of them fairly new as well, because there are a series of them, and that the officer in question remains on active duty? Does that concern you that perhaps it may not necessarily lend to a feel of safety within the work environment?
Well, as I want to address that matter, we treat certain matters as allegation until we get the evidence. And therefore, it is necessary that when an allegation is made, then we bring forward the evidence so that action can be taken accordingly. So I recall when that matter came in, it was copied to me as minister with responsibility for gender affairs, but it was addressed to the Commissioner of Police for action. So we had to wait for the one who was called to action to do what is necessary. And as minister, you cannot usurp authority by going ahead and say, well, I'm Minister of Gender Affairs and therefore this and that. You cannot do that when it comes to legal matters. So as far as I'm concerned, it is one that is, whether it is the officer in the police force or somebody working in the supermarket or in the schools or in the health sector, no matter what, the issue of sexual harassment is one that is, I have zero tolerance for that. Not just because I'm a woman, but it is not right. And therefore, people must learn to respect each other. And that is my position on that. That is the position of the government. And therefore, whatever allegation is made in that respect, we expect that it follows what we call due process and let justice serve itself.
So you don't think that the officer being perhaps put on administrative leave would be necessary in this matter?
As soon as the investigation is on. But as I said, it was under the jurisdiction of the police commissioner to handle the matter.
But there were investigations, an investigation had been launched.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the investigation, in terms of any facilitation by your by Gender Affairs or by your office, did you have to at all facilitate the investigation in any way?
Well, the Department of Gender would get involved when they were invited to participate in whether to give evidence or guidance or any matter of that effect. But as I said, anybody who brings in an allegation, it is proper to investigate to find out if there is any truth in that matter.
Madam Minister, are you aware of any, I think earlier this year there were some allegations brought by a young female at the Water and Sewage Company against a senior manager. Are you aware of this?
No, it has not been brought to my attention. Maybe, as you said, it was an allegation somewhere, I don't know. It didn't come to me.
Is the Water and Sewage Company underneath Department of Labor?
No, they are under infrastructure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just one other question, I'm so sorry. Last we were here, Honorable Emma Hippolyte did indicate that the minimum wage was posing a bit of a difficulty for the small or micro businesses to be able to meet, and that there would be discussions with the entities, representative of those small micro businesses. Can you update us on where the Labour Department is going to fall in those discussions? And why are we still hearing that there are those concerns from businesses when we were told by you and other government officials that there was extensive consultation done on this matter? Okay,
I think you will develop an appreciation for minimum wage, and any employer who has to increase minimum wage is going to affect their profit margin. And there will be pushback on why should I pay my employees more money. So we expect that. So as far as I'm concerned, the Prime Minister did announce that as of October 1st, the minimum wage will be effective. And therefore, we are waiting, now that we have ended the month of October, where people would have gotten those who are entitled or supposed to get an increase in their salaries. We have, as I said, opened the office for the Labour Tribunal and the Minimum Wage Commission. We have support from the Department of Labour to deal with any grievances or concerns that may come from both employers and employees as to whether they are actually implementing the legislation as stipulated. Notwithstanding that, I had a discussion with an employer which I will not want to disclose to the press for their own protection, that the minimum wage did not only affect people who were below the minimum wage. They actually made adjustment to persons who were above the minimum wage, and that is good news for us. So it's almost like a salary increase across the board, because if you have somebody who is a manager and then you have a regular employee and the gap between the pay was, let's say, for example, you have an arbitrary figure of, let's say, $500, and now they have increased your minimum wage by, let's say, another $100 or $200, so that has closed the gap. But what the employer chose to do on his or her own was to increase those other persons who are already above the minimum wage. So that's a very positive sign for us. But we are still in discussion with the Minimum Wage Commission in terms of the application and implementation of the decision of the Minimum Wage Commission. In that, I was told that there is somebody who works for 4 days in the month, but because they pay the person at the end of the month, the person wants the monthly salary. So these are things that we have to clarify. And I think it was deliberate on the part of the Minimum Wage Commission to introduce the hourly rate. So it gives the employer that level of flexibility, because there are some people who work just for 2 weeks or 10 days in the month, and that does not mean maybe they're entitled to a month pay. So maybe the person had worked it out at a minimum wage rate and paid them for the number of days. So these are things that we are waiting for the Minimum Wage Commission to clarify, so that the employers understand how to apply the minimum wage concept. But so far, we have not seen an influx of reports coming from employees who are saying they should get more money and they have not paid them. We have not heard from employers coming into the Labor Department to complain about, employees are misbehaving or they are getting on because they have not paid them. So, as I said, we are taking it in stride.
But you believe that there is pushback, because in your opening statement.
Yeah, but to me, any employer who has to pay more money will not readily accept it. It's either you want your business to continue at as it was, or you want it disrupted by not applying the minimum wage. But anybody who has to pay more money from your profit margin will not smile at that.
Okay. In terms of the ability of the small businesses to sustain, are you concerned that they may not be able to sustain given the pushback that you speak of?
Right, but the question we have to ask were these businesses in existence because they were paying the employees below the minimum wage? Because you may not know the profit margin of these businesses, or whether they were just providing a service. And if they feel they cannot continue providing the service, paying more money, then these are areas we have to address on a case-by-case basis, so that the government can come in to assist maybe these small businesses to keep them and help them stay afloat. So we are waiting for these kind of reports, and when it comes forward, because the Prime Minister has asked, what has been the reaction? Are we getting feedback from the employers, the employees? How is the implementation? We said we are still waiting. We have not seen a big hoorah on, oh, it is too much or it's not enough. But quietly, we hear little snippet of things. But as you said, we are waiting for the evidence to take it on. But the labor officers are the ones who will be monitoring that very closely.
And finally, from me, Minister, I just want some clarification, if you can provide it, with the job figures and how that is determined. Because we keep hearing in the public domain about the new sort of indicator that is used to determine who is unemployed. And certainly individuals who are not actively seeking employment is not being factored into the unemployed figures. Can you provide us some clarification on what is this new ILO stipulation that is giving rise to how the calculation is done?
Well, this information comes from the statistics department, and they will peg their figures based on ILO standards. It is not something that is applicable to St. Lucia, and St. Lucia will do its own thing. They have to use what is applied internationally to determine employment and unemployment rate. So whatever figure that they have been given for years is the same methodology, the same system they will apply to arrive at it now. I know some people may not like the idea that maybe unemployment rate is going down and they say, oh, so many people are unemployed. But I can share with you that I, as Minister of Labor, responsible for work permit, you should see the number of persons who are seeking employment in St. Lucia. Now, we have a number of job opportunities in St. Lucia. And we may have persons who are unemployed, but they do not have the skills for these type of jobs. And therefore, the employer has to seek for these skills outside of St. Lucia. So we may have persons who are unemployed. They are not employable, meaning that you have work to do, but they cannot do the work. Or some of them do not want to work, or they do not want to do that type of work. And they have their own mindset on what they think their salary should be. So all these are challenges that would demonstrate that you have a few people out there who are not working, and it's not because there isn't job or work to be done, but they do not have the skills for this work. Or you employ them and they say, I do not want to do that type of work, or I cannot do that type of work. All right? But normally, as you indicated, that the once you stop seeking for job, you are not counted as employable. That means you are not looking for work. So they have the way of getting information as to how many people are looking for work. And that is how they arrive at how many persons or what percentage is unemployed and what percentage are unemployed. And we also have what we call underemployed. There are people who are employed, but they still want to do more. So they do a second job or a third job because they have skills, they have talents which they can use otherwise. So these people are fully employed. So these are some of the challenges we have in the labor market. But it is a little worrisome to see the number of St. Lucians who may not have the skills to do the work that is coming on the market, especially now we are moving into the construction area with a number of hotels and a lot of civil engineers and electrical engineers and so on. We may have persons who are electricians but maybe not operating at that sophisticated and senior level in the field. So it is one that is a challenge for us at this time.
So that's the biggest sector that's driving the work permit?
Yes, construction, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the hotels and there are areas of specialization. For example, you have different cuisines, Italian, Indian, and St. Lucians don't have the skills in that area. So these people come to produce because remember we are a touristic nation and people want variety. It's not just St. Lucian food, but they want to sample other foods and you need persons trained in that area to do it.
Do you think that the new methodology by the ILO is creating this false sense of security where joblessness is concerned?
I don't know, because if it has worked over the years, why is it not working now? And I think it is an indication that it's pointing to the nation that we have to begin to address the issue of skill set of the people. Make sure when we do the analysis of needs, job assessment and what is required, then it puts some pressure on the education system so that we can train people to fit the job market as things change. Now we are moving into technology and a number of areas, and people still have their old traditional way, old traditional skills. So countries that are more advanced than us are likely to come in and take some of the top jobs here. So we have to encourage our people to get up and do something and provide the opportunities for them.
So then the government should really, because it has been marketed as St. Lucia now having the lowest unemployment rates in history. So that within itself is a contradiction, is it not?
No,
based on the explanation that you've given.
No, I'm saying the method that is used to calculate unemployment is an international standard. It's not a St. Lucia standard. So according to the international standard, this is where it falls. But reality on the ground, but I have my way of doing my own standard of unemployment. If I pass down the road and I see a whole set of fellas and people sitting on the bus stop at 10 in the morning, I ask myself, are these people watchmen? So that means they are not working during the day because they're watching the night. And I know these people are not watchmen. So I know they are unemployed. But when I pass and I see the numbers went down, I say, where are they today? Why we have so few sitting? I mean, that's just a layman's way of assessing. But you would know how I see so many of them pass behind the pickup van. They have their little haversack on their back and they are going somewhere to work. It was not happening before. So there is some movement in terms of people engaged in employment activity somewhere. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, can we?
Yes, sir.
Today is International Day of Prohibition of Violence Against Women. I want to tell you that the government has zero tolerance to any kind of violence, particularly violence against women. We were one of the first countries to pass a Domestic Violence Act, and which criminalize violence against women. So I want to stand in solidarity with all women who have been violated, who continue to be violated either verbally or physically, and urge that the whole community has a zero tolerance to that kind of behavior, to all types of violence, but violence against women, particularly violence against women at this time.
And so, talk about violence. We just came from the CARICOM meeting in Guyana on crime. How did it go, sir?
Oh, very well, very well. There is nothing comforting in these words, but all I can tell you is that there seems to be a pandemic of crime in the region. And this is not, that wasn't meant to be an excuse. It's a fact. The entire region seems to be plagued with that pandemic of violence, particularly gang violence and particularly violence among young men. In fact, there were many discussions as far as this is concerned. One of it was the influence of music. There was a paper on whether music influences the type of music, whether it influences that kind of behavior. This is work in progress. There was also the impact of violence on the health services. And again, something that we suffer from in St. Lucia. The violence, the stabbings and the woundings, how does that impact on the health services? There was an estimate in one country that $22 million has been spent in the health services to deal with violence as it relates to stabbings and wounding. And this is one of the major problems we have here in St. Lucia in our emergency services, the impact on stabbing and shooting. So this is not unique. As Adam said, we're not comforting ourselves, but I was very pleased to know that St. Lucia is very, very much advanced. And I'm not going to compare to other countries, so don't ask me. St. Lucia is very much advanced in what we're doing here as it relates to the abatement of crime and violence. I was very pleased to hear what we've been doing here. But we have a lot more to do. And we continue to do a lot more. But I'm very concerned about the glorification of crime in certain sectors for political reasons. The opposition always seems to be happy when things do not go right as far as crime is concerned. There seems to be a joy, instead of condemning criminality and saying to criminals that they're on the wrong path, and trying like we worked with an NGO, give them $250,000 based on a budget to help in crime suppression in areas that were depressed, and the opposition lambasted it. The opposition, in their desperation, seemingly, and I make no bones about it, seemingly encourage crime, encourage criminality, encourage disorder for their own political motives. And I'm saying to the people of St. Lucia, do not get themselves carried away by power-hungry people who refuse to understand that it's the people's right to elect the government, and it's the people's right to remove the government when the time comes. I can assure you there are going to be no elections in St. Lucia anytime soon. Elections are called by the Prime Minister. They've always been called by the Prime Minister, and they'll be continue to be called by the Prime Minister. There will be no one will ever be able to say to the Prime Minister, it has never happened before, it won't happen now, when to call elections. The Prime Minister will call elections, and the Prime Minister will ensure that he follows the constitutional requirements for elections. So all this disorder and this deliberate creation of trying to pretend there's a chaos and there's crisis in this country, that will not go anywhere. It will just keep the country back, and I'm calling on all solutions to disregard this power-hungry situation that's happening in this country.
Mr. Prime Minister, what would you say is the most significant measure development from the meeting, came out from the meeting? What would you say?
The most significant development of the meeting is that there's a pandemic of crime that in the region that we have to come together to solve. There's no one solution. There's no one thing you can do at this time to solve the pandemic in the region. We need a whole of society approach. We need politicians to stop glorifying crime for their own personal, for their own political motives. We need to have some things where you draw a red line. And a red line must be drawn against criminality. Social programs will help. Social programs are helping to a certain extent. Rehabilitation must happen. It's a whole series of interventions that have to happen, and not one intervention. So what I want to tell you is that the meeting has agreed that the crime situation in the country as a public health issue exists in all the islands in the region, and we have to get together to solve it.
And in that regard, so we just heard of another homicide down in Sufre. A young man lost his life. And recently they had a shooting right in the middle of town.
And all these things are things that are of great concern, and condolences to the relatives of these people. Great concern. There's nothing to be happy about it. There's no reason why we must be happy about these things. We must condemn it. And we have to condemn it. And glorifying it does not help for political reasons. We must stop doing that. And I'm calling on solutions to say to the people who are doing it that this glorification of crime must stop.
Okay, on another note, this morning we saw the opposition said that they brought a letter to you of concerns about crime and a number of CIP issues and things. I had a small protest on this. What do you say to them? What message would you like to say to them?
You see, I'll tell you something. I have a lot of things to do. I have a country to run. I have a country to run that is in a situation where so many positive things are happening in this country that sometimes I say to myself that we have to manage what's happening in terms of the number of positive things happening in this country. You understand? On the matter of CIP, I'm not going to say anything about it, so don't even ask me. All what has been said of CIP has been said. Some of it has been reversed. I'm not saying anything about it again. Nothing. So anybody wants to ask me about CIP, that's their own concern. I'm not. This Prime Minister is saying nothing again about CIP. All that has been said about CIP has been said. It has been, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts had the last say on CIP. So I'm saying nothing about CIP. So the question on CIP, I'm not involved. Yes, anything else?
Prime Minister, you just indicate, following up from Jerry with regard to the meeting that was held at the crime symposium, you just indicated that St. Lucia is advanced in the crime management. Can you, that's very good to know, can you share with us in what areas we seem to be?
St. Lucia seems, what we're doing in St. Lucia is, as now again, I don't want you to misquote me. What I was saying to you, I was very pleased to hear that some of the things that have been recommended, St. Lucia is very advanced in doing them. There's a lot more to be done. We haven't reached their heads. There's a lot more to be done. A lot more, Lisa. So we haven't reached yet. But I'm saying, like example, conditions, given equipment, vehicles, physical buildings for the police, training, rehabilitation, working with NGOs. St. Lucia is following all these paths. But there's a lot more to be done. And the crime situation is a pandemic that every Prime Minister has sleepless nights over it. And what also came up is that the failure to have that there's no regional press, you know what I mean? Because before, like, we know what's happening more in the United States, what's happening in Jamaica, what's happening in Trinidad, what's happening in Barbados. So a regional press would help, so we could share experiences. But there's a need, in fact, a big topic of discussion was the influence of music on crime. Whether there's any link between musical lyrics and crime. That was a major topic for discussion. The health impacts, the mental wellness impacts. How are we sure that there's not some level of correlation between mental wellness and crime? Parenthood, the role of the family, whether the family organization that we are following is the correct one. You understand? So it's multifaceted. But what, as I want to say again, is nothing comforting. But the issue seems to be in the entire region. Nothing comforting. It's a very grave situation. To my mind, I think that's the biggest challenge facing the region, the gun violence, the idea of guns coming in from overseas. There's a big discussion on transnational crime, on criminals coming across the seas to commit crime in the region. There was discussion on the CARICOM arrest warrant. We have implemented it. Whether you can arrest people in different islands. There was a discussion on the movement of personnel, of police personnel. You see, the laws came into effect. Whether the separation, in fact, one prime minister said that in Samoa, there was a meeting between the judiciary, the judges, and the politicians, and the prime ministers, right? Whether the judiciary were in line with what's happening in the society. Then, so the discussion was on whether the bail requirements, whether the offenses are there, because a big complaint is that sometimes there is bail is too lenient. That's a discussion. The idea of sentencing. So it's multifaceted. And all these discussions, but there's not a one solution. We can't say we can do this and solve it, or we can do that and solve it. It's a multifaceted. And this is why we believe that we should approach this situation jointly, so we can see what can happen.
Just one follow-up on that, Prime Minister. It would seem that I want to be careful to say there may be this emerging threat now where individuals who have been released, whether it be by parole or they serve their time, are finding themselves victims of crime that they shot dead. That is another aspect that it would seem that we now have to look at closely.
Witness protection. And you see, again, multifaceted. So the question is whether the region can come into some arrangement for witness protection. Because again, witnesses are taken out. All over, you understand? And you made a point about people coming out from on parole, and people where they're released from prison, they seem to be targets when they're released from prison. Whether the region come together to give some safe harbor to these people. What's the role of victims? A big discussion. Lisa, was the children of victims of crime, both the young men who are shot, their children, and the people who are arrested for shooting them, what happens to these children? Are we following these children? Are these children getting the counseling that they deserve? Because situations, Prime Minister spoke about situations where a kid was a few years old. His mother was abused by his father. The father killed the mother. And the mother's relatives killed the father. So you have a kid with no parents on the streets. Very, very, very complex. Very, very complex. To my mind, it's one of the biggest problems facing the region, plus climate change.
Prime Minister, I'll go back to your statement earlier where you spoke about the Prime Minister will be the one to call the elections. What is your current stance on a fixed election date?
Yes. As you know, we are reviewing the Constitution. Right? There's a Constitutional Review Committee looking at the Constitution with a parliamentary committee. And all these issues are going to come into play. Fixed election dates. But even if they are fixed election dates, you can call elections before, you know. Fixed election means a date that you can call it after. In some constitutions, I think in the British Constitution, I'm not sure, that you can call elections before the date. But in the American Constitution, it's one date. You understand? But all these things are in for discussion. You see, I am not a Prime Minister who wants to impose. I believe in consensus. I believe in discussion. I believe in bringing the minds together. I never believe I know everything, even though sometimes you criticize me for it. You understand? I believe in consensus. I believe in dialogue. I don't believe in acting hastily or saying things hastily. When I say something, if I have something that is wrong, I am man enough to say I made a mistake. I have no issues in saying that. So in terms of fixed election dates, I have my own opinions about it, but I prefer to get a consensus and then I'll come back with it. But that has been coming up all the time. But as I said to you, there's a constitutional review happening now for the Parliament, and that will come up.
Okay. Speaking about being wrong, Prime Minister, in the public domain, there have been those who shared a thought that you were wrong for going to Dominica and ringing the bell and
why have we lost?
And taunting the people of St. Lucia. Some see it as that. You thought that was...
Listen, why have we lost our... Why are we creating a society with such animosity? We can't laugh. We can't have why are we doing that to ourselves? Why are we doing that to ourselves? We're creating an atmosphere of hostility. Let me tell you what happened. There was a convention in Jamaica. Roosevelt brought a bell. So he said a bell, he says that's his bell. When I was speaking, I said, Roosevelt, lend me your bell. I said the bell and I rang it. I mean, why we can't, that's not good, you know. You see what we're doing in St. Lucia for political reasons. That's not good, you know. That anger we are generating in this country for political, and I want you to quote me in saying that. That anger we are generating in St. Lucia for political reasons is not good. Not good at all. It'll come back to bite us, you know. You can't make a joke. You can't laugh. There is a creation of, they want to create an environment that don't really exist. Why are we doing that? We come into the time of goodwill, of good cheer. Let's lighten up a little bit.
So it
The
was a
people will
light-hearted
decide.
moment
It was
for
light-hearted.
you.
I didn't say anything that was so. Why didn't they say that I never spoke about Dominican politics? Why didn't they say that?
Pardon?
I never spoke about Dominican politics. You know that? I never spoke about Dominican politics. Never.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because coming from a civil organization called Civic Vibes,
Oh, that's
they have sent out a press release and addressed to yourself or letter addressed to yourself and Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell, and they've raised concerns about the repeated references to the word enemies by you in your speech. And they seem to believe that it does not augur well for that peace that you speak of.
Interpretation. I wasn't referring to it. I didn't call any man an enemy. Interpretation. I said our enemies are against progress. Our enemies are against poverty. Our enemies are. That's what I said. Our enemies are also advantage. But I said our enemies. I didn't say who was our enemy.
Do you think that word, Prime Minister, is in line with what you have been calling for in terms of better rhetoric from the platform?
I don't think there's any correlation between saying our enemies are against us than a guy going on a platform up to yesterday and calling the Prime Minister an idiot. You understand? I think there is no correlation between that and people going on the platform taking the Prime Minister's daughter and putting her in a situation where she's not. You understand? I just think there's any correlation between that and people going on platforms and saying it's time for war and it's time for them to be angry. And I don't think it's a correlation. But if the people on Nika think using the word enemies was offensive, I don't think it was, but it's their opinion.
I just have one other follow-up question, or maybe two.
And you have to have that sit down. I tell you, I promise you.
Well, absolutely. I
promise you.
Oh, well, you've brought it up, so that means it's happening
It's
this
happening,
time.
it's happening. We need to talk. We need to talk.
And we are going on the record, not a private conversation, on record.
My press secretary did it for you, but we'll talk.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
All right.
With regard to election, again, over in Dominica, you had the pleasure of being part of the sword turning ceremony for the international airport there. And I saw that you were very happy with the progress being made for Dominica.
When you're doing ours here, the right way.
Absolutely. Can you update us then on what is happening with our own international airport?
Very good question. You see, listen, when you are the Prime Minister of a country, especially a Prime Minister like me, who does not believe in dreams, who thinks that there must be reality to vision. There must be some vision. I can say I have a vision of putting 10 stories in that building. That would be beautiful. I can say I have a vision of putting 21 islands in the area, making 21 islands in. That's a beautiful vision, but it has to be in reality. Let me tell you the story of the airport. We've said it before, but we say it again. In my good conscience, I could not put the public of St. Lucia on a debt for an airport that all the experts showed was not necessary. The expenditure at the time was not necessary. The experts say that what was going to be built there would have cost this country nearly $1 billion EC worth of debt. Further, it was the largest infrastructure program in the country that was not tendered. It was given by direct award. 1. 2, the loan was attached to a financial institution. 3, apart from the interest rate of 5%, there was an 8% transaction cost. So in effect, the money was coming to Lucia at 13% interest. 4, there was never a master plan, holistic plan given to the contractor. The contractor is given plans as you go. As you go, do this. As you go, do this. 4. 5, the airport location was moved. It took, at the initial stages, the piling for that structure was more than double the original cost of piling. So immediately the piling cost went up. I could not put a public officer in Lucia through that. I could not do it. My conscience would not allow me to do it. I couldn't. Here's what we did. And all these things are done not by me. And I think the press misses that point. These things are recommendations, not Philip J.P. and his cabinet that do these things. These are recommendations from experts. When we took that decision on the airport, we had recommendations from independent experts who advised us 3 options. But there was one common thread, that was not necessary for St. Lucia at this time. I will not be necessary in the near distant future. That was one common thread. And that has been ventilated, but it's either that we don't report it or we forget it. We weren't the ones to get it. I didn't take that decision. That decision was taken by airport experts who gave us these options. And we decided 2 things. One, we would continue with the control tower, because the control tower was necessary because of the level, and there is a World Bank project on the runway which has to be in correlation with the control tower. We'll continue with the control tower. We have gotten some problems with the control tower as far as the contractor and SLASP are concerned. These are being resolved. In terms of the terminal building, we decided, based on expert advice, that the terminal building wasn't necessary. There was never a tender document. There was never a bill of quantities for the terminal building. Here's where we are now. We've put out to tender for quantity surveyors to prepare a bill of quantities. That tender, and you must understand that's done by SLASPA. That tender has been approved, and as we speak, the bill of quantities is prepared. Probably early next year, before the year is ended, we're going to have an international tender for the construction of the terminal building at Tiwanora Airport. So you will see for yourself, the public will see all those who tendered, and the public will see the costs. So where we are now is we are intending to finish the control tower, albeit with a different contractor, and tenders will go out, international tenders, for the construction of the terminal building. That's where we are now. Let's relate that to Dominica, because I know that's what has been said. I've been called a hypocrite to go Dominican. I mean, this kind of pettiness. The good thing, I don't worry about these things. Dominica's airport is a pure CIP program. Pure, P-U-R-E, pure. Dominica had to move people out of their homes, had to clear an entire area for that. All that was done on that point. So it's two completely different situations, right? I mean, I don't want to go into details of the Dominica project.
But I would not expect you to be able to give us details on that. But I do want to ask about where we at with the airport development tax, and how much have we been able to collect?
It's been collected. I can tell you exactly how much from SASPA. I don't know how much it's been collected as usual. I can tell you exactly how it was there, and at some point it's been collected, and it's been in a separate. It's an account.
Will that be put towards the project?
And you see, you're asking some very pertinent questions. Of course it will be. But let me tell you something else. In the new airport construction, I am going to advise SASPA to bring the IFC to oversee the construction for us, to oversee all the processes. The IFC is an international body that was unceremoniously kicked by the last government. We're going to bring them back to look at the whole process so there can be full transparency. Full. Because airports is big business. The construction of airport is big business. You understand? So we want full transparency, full accountability. So apart from the structures we have now, we're going to be calling the IFC to oversee the entire process so the public can be fully appraised. But be well in tune with the new airport.
I'm just going to ask you for one other update on St. Jude Hospital.
St. Jude
and
Hospital,
what phase are we at? And
okay, St. Jude Hospital, as you know, the funding is in place. And for these projects, you have supply chain issues. But construction is happening. 4 of the buildings are either completed or very near completion. I have not had it a bit for a while because, you know, the difference between me as a prime minister, I allow my ministers the responsibility to do their jobs. And I think that's one of the problems. Prime ministers believe they can do everything and they know everything and they profess to know everything. And you criticize me sometimes, you might say I do not know. So what I'm understood is that I know, in fact, that the St. Jude is progressing. And we're very confident that St. Jude will be opened very soon, sometime next year. Very confident about it. All things being equal. Very
Prime
confident.
Minister, since we are in the vein of healthcare, yesterday you made some announcements in that sector. Can you enlighten us? For example, the rehabilitation of the ER.
Yeah. As you know, we have the issue with the health services in this country. And again, these issues are not new. You know, I just want to give an aside, and I hope you remember it. You know, the United Workers' Party behaves as if they were never in government, you know. If you listen to them, as if they were never in government. They were there from 2006 to 2011. They had 5 years there. And some of the same players were involved in that government. 2006, 2011. They pretend as if they were never in government. Then they were there again from 2016 to 2021. I just want you to remember that. Remember that. Yeah? When that pretense of never being in government is concerned. All right. In health services, the issue with the emergency health services, we're trying to solve it by rehabilitation of the old emergency ward at Victoria Hospital, Old Victoria Hospital. We're going to be within that. We're going to be refurbishing, retrofitting, and putting a separate emergency ward, emergency unit at the Old Victoria Hospital to take the pressure off the OKU hospital. We also are going to be expanding the Grosley Polyclinic so we can take some of the emergency cases there. So the pressure on the OKU will be lessened with these two developments. Further, we are looking to pay the outstanding debt of the Ministry of Health in St. Lucia. I am told it's in excess of $40 million. We are looking to pay it so the Ministry of Health can use the allocation for current expenses. Right now, they have to use the allocation to pay debt. We owe a hospital in Martinique over $2 million for health services given to St. Lucians. We owe several of the service providers in St. Lucia. We're going to be paying them all up so we can use the allocation of the Ministry of Health for current services. So, in terms of supply shortages, as I told you, the last injection of $15 million had to pay outstanding bills. There still are outstanding bills, major outstanding bills. We are using that allocation to pay them. So the answer to your question is that there are going to be major changes in the emergency care in the hospitals in St. Lucia in the short run.
Okay, in
Okay,
the area
that's it.
of, just two more questions.
I have a cabinet, yes.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so right now, this administration has restored the police training vote, right? Currently, there is a cohort of 80 recruits. After the graduation of this cohort, can we see
Yes.
more police
On the
officers?
17th of December, these 80 recruits are going to be graduated, and immediately there'll be a new recruitment immediately after. Immediately. So by the end of March, end of February, we'll have another set of recruits in training. So by the end of next year, we'll have added to the police service in less than a year 160 new recruits. Why are you looking so despondent? Don't feel well. I'm sorry.
My final question.
Yes.
Yesterday, you received a 100%.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm so consumed with my work, I forgot that. I really want to thank the delegates of the St. Lucia Labour Party. I feel a great depth of gratitude to them for their show of confidence in me for the second time. In fact, for the third time, I intend to take my job very, very seriously, not only for Labour Party people, but for the people of St. Lucia generally. The people of St. Lucia generally, not only Labour Party people, they're the ones who gave me the mandate. But my goal, my aim, is to have a country for the people of the country, for all the people, regardless of their political complexion, to have a better life. That's my goal. And the Labour Party is the vehicle in which I am doing that for the time being. So I want to thank them for that show of confidence.
I know I said one last question, but this is really the last question. I know this administration prides itself on creating jobs, job creation. Can you enlighten us on any capital projects that will do just that?
First of all, it's clear the unemployment has gone down to 11%. So jobs are happening. But again, our goal is to have the unemployment to single digits before the end of this electoral term. That's our goal. But government's not the only ones that give jobs. Private sector, when government needs investment, the enabling environment for create jobs. But it's our goal to reduce it to single digit numbers very, very, very shortly. Thank you. Okay, what's wrong with you? The flu?
Yes.
But the job not allowed to eat on time?